Hello, friends. I'm so glad you're here. You know, sometimes after a long day, it's nice to slow down and settle into a cozy spot where we can share stories together. This is a special place where bedtime stories help us unwind, spark our imaginations, and gently guide us into sweet dreams. Each night, we'll go on an adventure. Some will be fun, some a little mysterious, but all of them will be told with care, just for you. So grab your favorite blanket, get nice and comfy, and let's enjoy a story together. It's a wonderful way to end the day, isn't it? I'm so happy you're here with me. Tonight's story is called The Shadow of AELTHORN by Rose in California. In the twilight of the world, in an age long forgotten, there was a kingdom called AELTHORN, nestled in the cradle of the Elmerian Mountains. Its towers were white as frost, its banners golden, and its people lived in peace under the rule of King Aldrich, a man of great wisdom and honor. Yet even in those days of tranquility, there were whispers of ancient evils, of a darkness that once lay dormant beneath the roots of the world. But no whisper was more persistent than that of the shadow of AELTHORN. It was said that beneath the kingdom, in caverns deep and winding, something stirred, something older than the mountains themselves. It was a shadow not born of light, but of fear and forgotten sorrow. Many dismissed it as an old tale meant to frighten children, but some believed the legends, especially among the eldest of the elves and the dwarves who had long dwelt near the kingdom's borders. The story begins in the final days of that peace, when a young woman named Alira, a ranger of the northern woods, found herself summoned to the king's court. The great hall of AELTHORN was a magnificent sight, with tapestries hanging from vaulted ceilings, telling tales of victories and triumphs from centuries past. King Aldrich sat upon his throne, his gray hair a crown of age and wisdom. Beside him stood his son, Prince Toric, tall and fair, with the bright eyes of a hawk. Alira of the North, the king said, his voice strong despite his years, we have summoned you, for we are in need of your skill and courage. Alira knelt before the throne, feeling the weight of the king's gaze upon her. My king, I am at your service. A murmur spread through the hall. Few had ever been summoned for such an audience. Alira had spent her life in the wilderness, a guardian of the forest far from the politics of the court. The king's face was grave. Something stirs beneath the Elmerian Mountains, something ancient. Alira glanced up, her heart quickening. The shadow? The king nodded. We do not know what it is, but the mines have been silent for a fortnight. Not a single dwarf has returned from the depths. A darkness has spread through the lower tunnels, and those few who have ventured near speak of an unnatural cold, of whispers in the dark. Beside the king, Prince Toric stepped forward. We fear it is no mere shadow, but an evil long buried, now awakened. We have sent word to the elves of the west and the dwarves of Golgrenhold, but they have offered no answers. That is why we need you, Alira. Alira stood, feeling the weight of the task. What would you have me do, my lord? You must venture into the depths, the king said, his voice heavy. Find what lies beneath our kingdom, and, if it is within your power, end it. The journey into the mountains was long and treacherous. Alira was not alone. Prince Toric, despite the protests of his father, insisted on accompanying her. along with a small band of warriors, a dwarf named Branner and a wise elf named Alarion. The deeper they traveled into the mountains, the more the world seemed to change around them. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as if even the sun feared to touch the peaks of the Elmerian heights. By the time they reached the entrance to the abandoned mines, a sense of unease had settled over the company. "This place reeks of foul magic," Alarion said, his sharp eyes scanning the entrance. His hand rested on the hilt of his slender blade, though it did little to ease the tension. Branner, the dwarf, grunted. "There's something more than magic here, elf. This is deeper, older. It smells of the dark things that should not wake." The entrance to the mines yawned before them, a great black maw cut into the side of the mountain. Alira took a breath, tightening her grip on her bow. "We go forward," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever lies within, we must face it." They ventured into the mine, their torches flickering in the darkness. The walls seemed to close in around them as they descended, the tunnels twisting and turning as if they had been shaped not by the hands of dwarves but by something far older and more malevolent. Hours passed in silence, the only sound the soft echo of their footsteps on stone. Alira's heart beat steadily, but she could feel the presence of something watching them, lurking just beyond the edge of the light. "It's too quiet," Torek muttered, his sword drawn. "There should be some sign of the miners, anything." "They are gone," Branner said grimly, "consumed by whatever lies in the deep." Suddenly the ground beneath their feet trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling and a deep guttural sound echoed through the tunnel, like the growl of some monstrous beast waking from a long slumber. Alira raised her hand, signaling for silence. She could hear it now, faint at first, but growing louder. Whispers, like the wind through dead leaves, coming from the darkness ahead. "We are not alone," Alarion whispered, his eyes narrowing. "Something is coming." Out of the shadows a shape emerged, tall and twisted, its skin black as pitch, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It moved with a horrible grace, like a serpent slithering through the air. Behind it, more shadows began to appear, each more grotesque than the last, their forms shifting and writhing. "They're spirits," Alira said, her voice low, "lost souls, bound to the shadow." Banner gripped his axe, not for long. The battle was fierce. The creatures moved with unnatural speed, their forms flickering in and out of the torchlight. Alira fired arrow after arrow, each one finding its mark, but the creatures did not fall easily. Torek fought at her side, his blade flashing as he cut through the darkness. Branner's axe swung in wide arcs, cleaving through the spirits, while Alarion's magic crackled in the air, a bright light in the overwhelming gloom. But for every creature they felled, more appeared, rising from the shadows as if the very darkness was alive. "We can't hold them off forever," Torek shouted, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Alira knew he was right. They had to find the source, the heart of the shadow. "This way," she called, leading them deeper into the mine. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadow. At the center stood a great stone altar, covered in runes that glowed with a sickly light. And there, hovering above the altar, was the source of the darkness, a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes burning with ancient malice. "Alira," the voice whispered, echoing in the chamber. "You have come." She stepped forward, her bow drawn. "I am here to end this." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled her to the bone. "You cannot end what has always been. I am the shadow of AELTHORN. I am the darkness that lies beneath the world." Alira's hands trembled, but she steadied herself. "You may have always been, but your time is over." She loosed her arrow, and as it flew through the air, it glowed with a light so bright, it seemed to banish the shadows from the cavern. The arrow struck the figure in the heart, and for a moment all was still. Then, with a great roar, the shadow shattered, the darkness collapsing in on itself, spiraling into the altar and disappearing into the stone. Silence fell over the cavern. When they emerged from the mine, the sun was rising over the Elmirian mountains, its light warm and golden. The darkness had passed. AELTHORN was safe once more. But as Alira looked back at the mountains, she knew that some shadows never truly fade. They linger, waiting, in the deep places of the world. For now, though, they had won, and that was enough. The end. Well, wasn't that a lovely story? I'm so glad we could share it together. Now, as the day comes to an end, it's time to rest and let all those wonderful thoughts and dreams carry you through the night. Remember, tomorrow is a new day, full of new adventures, and I'll be right here when you're ready for another story. Until then, take a deep breath, get cozy, and know that you are safe, you are loved, and you are important, just the way you are. Good night, and sleep well.